This weekend, we just wrapped up with UFC Tybura versus Spivak in what was one of the most god-awful UFC Apex cards we have ever seen. This is coming off the back of the UFC and the TKO group talking about how pay-per-view sales are finally dropping and going down overall for the year of 2024, how that is Disney's fault. This is also coming off the back of prominent MMA YouTubers retiring from their careers about making content on this, and other MMA YouTubers saying that they are just overall done with the sport. In this video, I'm going to tie all of this together and talk about the direction that the UFC is going in, and maybe make this video and make it serve as a bit of a warning to the TKO group and the UFC brand as a whole. They're on a horrible trajectory this year. And there is a way that all of this can be drawn together in a narrative that shows just how bad the UFC has been in 2024. Let's start off with what the UFC said about ESPN and the Disney Group, okay? The UFC came out last week, TKO came out last week actually, and said ESPN and Disney were very aggressive, if you will, on pricing the pay-per-views. They have full control over that, but they have the control given what they're paying us for those rights, Mark Shapiro said. Over the period of our partnership, they probably went a little quicker and a little higher than we would have liked. So UFC and TKO seem to be putting the downed pay-per-view sales onto the backs of ESPN and Disney, who have the TV rights. But I do not believe that is 100% what is going on here. Now, obviously, the prices of the pay-per-views has been going up, and while the prices of the pay-per-views have been going up, so has the price of the cost of living around the world. And spending $90 a month on something that is just sports entertainment might not be at the top of people's priorities list. But it's not just the fact that the price of the cost of living is going up, and so is the price of a pay-per-view. It is also the fact that the product that the UFC has been putting out has been getting worse and worse and worse. Look, there is no secret that the UFC Apex cards have been absolutely garbage this year. And they've been garbage for a long time, pretty much since 2019, 2020. Since we moved into the Apex, they have been getting progressively worse and worse and worse. However, this year it does seem to be like we have been getting an excessive amount of bad cards. And very often the UFC skims by with an Apex card because the fights turn out okay and we end up having a good night. But last night was one of those nights where things just went bad the entire card. The card was boring on paper, the card was boring to watch. But it's not just the Apex cards that have been bad. A lot of the pay-per-views have been bad this year as well. Look, UFC 296 to start off the year over in Canada was kind of dead. If it wasn't for Dricus and Sean Strickland, that was a bad card. UFC 301, right after UFC 300, the one that was in Brazil where Steve Erceg got a title shot in his third fight in the UFC, was pretty bad. The Conor McGregor card, UFC 303, luckily that was saved at the last minute, but that whole card was built on Conor McGregor being there. The undercard was pretty bad. Next week, you've got UFC 305 here in Australia. If you're not an Aussie fan, that card kind of sucks. UFC 307, what is going on with that? UFC 306, yeah, it's at the Sphere, but have you seen the card? Take out Sean O'Malley, and I believe some of the people on that card are on their first or second fight in the organization. The quality of the UFC product, not just at the Apex, but overall is diminishing and diminishing and diminishing. And when you have got this narrative going on online that, oh, this weekend's card sucks when it comes to just another Apex card, that does become the default narrative that gets spread out throughout social media. And like it or not, but the UFC and MMA needs a general narrative and needs a casual audience to be out there on social media. Let's not pretend that Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor, and the Israel Adesanya, Kamaru Usman era, even Jorge Masvidal era, didn't help with the numbers and help with the sales of the UFC. And that was a very large casual audience that just popped in because they knew what product they were going to get, they enjoyed it, and it was fun. However, when that narrative shifts to the UFC is dead now, oh, this weekend's card is garbage, that is just what is put out there on repeat across the landscape of social media. And your casual fan that is into some sports or into some UFC or into some MMA, all they're getting when they're flicking through social media is just, oh, the UFC sucks now. They're not going to bother to sit down and watch next weekend's pay-per-view when they've just been told all year the UFC sucks now. So you are getting this general narrative across the social media landscape that the UFC sucks now. Then you have got these Apex cards that do genuinely suck. Then you have got these pay-per-view cards, and half of them are trash, mixed with upping the price. This is very bad for the UFC, and it is being reflected online with your most hardcore of fan base. Now, Lucas Tracy walking away from the sport might just be circumstantial, but it is happening during a time where fans are getting sick of the sport. I went and I did the rounds and listened to people's reactions of last night's fight card. Some of your most hardcore and dedicated fan base, I'm talking about people like the MMA Guru and MMA Joey as well. I went and listened to his recap because I was interested to see what does some of the most hardcore of the hardcore fans think about what is going on right now. And they are all sick of it. Now, these are the people that, yeah, they're just content creators, okay? Who cares? I'm just a content creator. They're just a content creator. Who really cares about their opinion? The UFC probably should care about their opinion because they are a reflection of the general audience, you know? People listen to them because they are giving these takes and this reflection of how they feel about it. And if parts of your most hardcore audience are sick of the product you are giving, half of the casual audience will be sick of the product that you're giving, and they will start to look to other things to go and entertain them. And here is where the warning comes in. Do not think, UFC, that you are immune to your fan base walking away. This has happened throughout entertainment products for the last 10 years consistently. Products like Disney Marvel and Disney Star Wars. People get sick of it and walk away and go and find something else to do. Look at the numbers of people that have watched baseball in the past. They've absolutely plummeted. Even in other sports like cricket, those numbers plummeted and they had to bring in things like T20 cricket, which is meant to be like a more fun and exciting version of the sport. Do not think that because you have a hardcore, dedicated fan base, that they will not get sick of the shit that you are serving them and get up and walk away and find something else to entertain them. Other companies have made that mistake and have lost billions of dollars because of it. And you, UFC, are not immune to it. The last thing that I wanted to touch on in this video is people talking about how, don't worry, the Apex is going to be shut for renovations. We're going somewhere else. This is not a good thing. That is not good news. That means that you are getting a break from shitty Apex cards because the UFC is doubling down on shitty Apex cards. They are going to start putting out more of them more often. The lies that Dana said we've got to get out of the Apex are obviously lies. Why else would he be reinvesting in the Apex to put more people in seats? The UFC see what they're doing with these Apex cards and have actively decided to up it by reinvesting in the Apex and making sure that next year, 2024, and in 2025, we get more of this. This is not a good direction for the UFC at all. If they keep putting out cards like this and pay-per-views like 296 and 301 and 305, casual fans will start to follow the hardcore fans and walk away. What is the solution to this problem? Less. We need less. There needs to be less athletes in the UFC. There needs to be less fight nights cards. The world of MMA has gotten so big where there are so many regional promotions. The UFC might need to be one of those things that happens every fortnight where you have fight nights and pay-per-views that actually matter. So it does feel like you are watching the pinnacle of MMA. So you can go and watch your LFA, your Cage Warriors, your Eternals down in Australia. You can see some young prospects work their way through the rankings of those organizations, become a champion in those organizations, go on to the Contender Series, get out of the Contender Series and go to a couple of fight night cards at the Apex, win a couple of fights at the Apex, then get into the rankings and then win themselves a UFC title. And it actually feels like they are the best fighter in the world. Right now, what the UFC is serving us up is just slop after slop after slop, and the fights feel like they don't mean anything. And that is a massive problem for the UFC. So trim it down. Support the other regional organizations, promote the other regional organizations on Fight Pass, make it seem like these regional organizations are all feeder organizations into the UFC, and the UFC is only where the big fights happen that actually matter, not John Jones versus Stipe Miocic, and we're meant to be watching Tybura versus Spivak, 2 top 10 heavyweights, rematch for a belt that isn't even contested. It's a joke. You're serving us a joke of a product. It needs to stop. Anyway, that is my rant and my perspective on what I am seeing from the fan base being reflected back to the UFC because of what the UFC are doing. Let me know your thoughts down there in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like to help support the channel. And until then, I will see you all in the next one.